Have you ever been somewhere where the quiet of the deep forest becomes a sound? The forests of West Virginia are just like that. The trees are so thick that when you look up, you can't see the sky. The fog doesn't go away here. It just waits. It was the 4th day of our trip when we found Cemetery Road. I can tell you this. Some roads are not supposed to be found. Our team was led by Captain Delaney, a thin man with gray streaks in his hair who was always thinking with his eyes. Right next to him walked our tech expert, Sergeant Kyle Bishop, carrying a bag full of communication equipment to keep us connected with base. He had to. Behind them, I was working as the scout James Ford, whom everyone called Jamie. And watching our backs was our medic, Corporal Lee. As quiet as can be, but strong when things went wrong. On paper, there was nothing hard about our mission. Find the remains of an old training camp left empty in the 70s. Find dangerous structures, and report back. The higher-ups wanted to know if this land could be used again for future work. Just another regular scouting job, something we'd done many times before in other forgotten faraway corners of Appalachia. But the moment we entered that valley, we noticed the change in the air. It felt heavier somehow, as if the wetness was weighing it down more than it should. The fog rolled in on our 2nd day, thick as cotton, cutting our view to maybe 20 feet on a good stretch. Bishop kept checking his GPS, frowning deeper each time the screen flickered. Delaney didn't say anything, just fixed his pack and kept moving. That's how he worked. No complaints, no panic, just forward movement until the job was done. I respected that about him, even when every feeling in my gut screamed to turn back. We made camp that night in a clearing surrounded by pine trees so tall they could have been planted when this country was still colonies. The fire crackled low, throwing shadows that danced too long against the tree trunks. Lee heated food while Bishop tried again to reach base on the radio. Static answered, thick and endless, broken up by bursts of noise that almost sounded like voices but never quite made words. Nothing, Bishop muttered, pulling off his headset. Every channel is dead. GPS is jumping locations like we're moving even when we're sitting still. Delaney stared into the fire, jaw working. Equipment problem, maybe, or interference. These mountains mess with signals sometimes. I didn't mention what I'd seen an hour before we stopped. Movement in the fog next to our path. Not animal movement, too careful, too measured. Human shapes, or what could look like them from far away, keeping up with us, but never getting closer. I told myself it was shadows playing tricks, that being tired and having bad light could make a man see anything. But I knew better. I'd been in enough dangerous places to know when something was following you. That night, none of us slept well. The forest made sounds, normal sounds. Branches creaking, wind pushing through leaves, faraway animals calling. But underneath it all was something else. A low hum barely there, like the earth itself was breathing. Lee heard it too. I caught him sitting up twice, head tilted, listening with the focus of a man trying to identify a danger he couldn't see. Dawn came gray and dull. The fog hadn't lifted, just shifted, moving in slow swirls between the trees. We broke camp in silence, each of us chewing on thoughts we didn't say out loud. Delaney looked at his paper map, the old-fashioned kind that didn't need satellites or batteries, tracing routes with a rough finger. Old logging road should cross our path about 2 miles north, he said. If the camp's where records say, we'll hit it by midday. We moved out. The ground sloped slowly downward. The soil was rich and dark, thick with years of rotting leaves. Every step released the smell of decay. Not bad exactly, but they're constant, the kind of smell that reminds you everything returns to the earth eventually, whether it wants to or not. 2 hours in, we found the road. Or rather, it found us. One moment we were walking between trees. The next, we stepped onto cracked pavement. Faded yellow lines still barely visible under layers of moss and dirt. A rusted sign hung crooked from a wooden post, letters worn almost smooth, but still readable if you knew what you were looking for. Cemetery Road. Bishop laughed, short and without humor. That's not creepy at all. Delaney studied the sign, then the road stretching in both directions, swallowed by fog after 30 feet. Map doesn't show any cemetery in this area. Map doesn't show this road either, I pointed out. Lee knelt, running fingers over the pavement. This hasn't been taken care of in years. Look at how broken down it is. But it's real. Not a trail, not a path, an actual paved road. We stood there for a moment, for soldiers in the middle of nowhere, staring at a road that shouldn't exist. Delaney made the call. We follow it north. Stay alert. If this connects to the camp, it'll save us. Time cutting through brush. So we walked. Our boots made soft scraping sounds against the worn pavement, each footstep echoing slightly in the thick air. The trees pressed close on both sides, their branches forming a roof overhead that blocked what little daylight came through the fog. It felt less like walking a road and more like moving through a tunnel, the world narrowing to just the strip of pavement under our feet and the gray wall ahead. That's when I started noticing the details. Small things at first. A mailbox door hanging open, no house visible behind it. A street lamp base rusted through, but the pole still standing. No power lines connecting it to anything. A child's tricycle lying on its side in the ditch. Plastic faded by the sun but not broken. Like someone had just set it down and walked away. "Sir," I called ahead to Delaney. "You seeing this?" He'd stopped, staring at something on the roadside. A sign smaller than the first, wooden and hand-painted. "Welcome to Ashford. Population 247. Bishop checked his tablet, now barely working, but still holding downloaded maps. "There's no Ashford in this county. No record of any town here ever." "Then who made the sign?" Lee asked quietly. Nobody answered because the truth was sitting heavy in all our chests. We'd found something we weren't supposed to find. And in my experience, those kinds of discoveries never ended well. The road curved ahead, gentle but clear. As we rounded it, buildings came out from the fog. Not ruins, not collapsed structures, but standing buildings. A general store with faded ads painted on the side. A post office. Flags still hanging from a pole. A diner. Chrome trim dulled by weather, but whole. All of them empty. All of them waiting. Delaney's hand went to his gun. Not drawing, just resting there. "Spread out. Look around. Do not enter any buildings alone." We spread into a loose pattern. Weapons ready, senses screaming. The town, if you could call it that, had maybe 15 buildings lining both sides of Cemetery Road. Houses with porches, storefronts with display windows, even a small church at the far end, steeple rising into the fog like a finger pointing at nothing. I walked up to the general store, peering through dirty windows. Shelves still stocked, cans and boxes arranged neatly despite the dust. A cash register sat on the counter, drawer closed. Behind it, a calendar hung on the wall, yellowed and curling. I couldn't make out the year from outside, but something about it made my skin crawl. "Captain," Bishop's voice crackled through our short-range radios. "You need to see this." We met at his position near the post office. He stood beside a bulletin board, protected by a weathered glass case. Inside, notices and flyers hung pinned. Ink faded but still readable. Community meetings, church services, a bake sale. All dated September 1973. Lee reached out, tried the post office door. It swung open smoothly, hinges silent. The smell that came out wasn't decay or mold. It was paper and ink. The smell of old mail. He stepped inside and we followed. Letters filled the sorting boxes, each one neatly placed, each one sealed. Bishop pulled one out, turned it over. No address, no stamp, just a name written in careful handwriting. Thomas Brennan. He pulled another. Sarah Wickham. Then another and another. Every letter addressed to someone. None of them going anywhere. "This is wrong," Lee said, voice tight. "This is all wrong." Delaney picked up a date stamp from the counter, looked at it. September 14th, 1973. That's the date on everything here. I moved to the back room, found more of the same. Mailbags stacked neatly, all bulging with sealed letters. A desk with a half-finished logbook, pen lying across it like the writer had just stepped away. And on the wall, a photo, black and white, showing the post office staff. 3 people smiling at the camera, wearing old clothes, standing in this exact room. But their faces, Something about their faces made me look away quick. Not because they were scary, but because they were too clear, too focused. Like the photo had been taken yesterday instead of 50 years ago. Like if I stared too long, I might see them blink. We met back outside. The fog had thickened, if that was possible, cutting our view even more. The buildings felt closer now, leaning in, their dark windows watching. Delaney's jaw was set hard, eyes looking around constantly. "We write down what we found and we leave," he said. "This isn't what we came for, and I don't like how open we are." Bishop pulled out his camera, started taking photos. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. Not ours, not close, but clear. Boots on pavement, steady and rhythmic, coming from somewhere in the fog. We froze, weapons raised, forming a circle for defense. The footsteps grew louder, closer, echoing off the empty buildings. Multiple sets now, marching in formation. I could hear the rhythm, the discipline, military movement. My heart hammered against my ribs as shapes began to form in the mist ahead. They came out slowly, like the fog was giving birth to them. Soldiers, maybe a dozen, walking in formation down Cemetery Road. They wore uniforms, old-style combat clothes, the kind given out in the 60s and 70s. They carried rifles held at the ready. They moved in perfect timing, boots hitting pavement together. But their faces, God, their faces, they had none. No features, no expressions, just smooth skin where eyes and mouth should be. Not scarred, not burned, just missing. Like someone had erased the details and left blank spaces where human beings should be. They marched past us without slowing, without noticing us. Close enough that I could hear the fabric of their uniforms rustling, could smell the damp canvas of their packs. Lee made a sound, half whimper, half prayer. Bishop's camera fell from shaking hands, hitting the pavement with a crack. Delaney stood stiff, weapon raised but not firing, watching as the faceless soldiers continued down the road toward the church. They never broke formation, never turned their heads. Just marched past like we were ghosts and they were the living. When the last one disappeared into the fog, we stood frozen. My lungs burned and I realized I'd been holding my breath. Lee's face had gone pale as paper. Bishop bent down to get his camera, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold it. "What was that?" Lee whispered. Delaney's voice came out rough. "We're leaving now, back the way we came." We turned, starting back up Cemetery Road toward where we'd entered the town. But the road had changed. The curve we'd walked around was gone, replaced by a straight stretch going into fog. The buildings were different, too. The general store now stood where the diner had been. The church, which had been at the far end, was now close on our right. "This isn't right," I said, voice cracking. "This isn't the same road." Bishop checked his GPS, cursed. "Coordinates are jumping. We're showing 3 different locations at the same time. That's impossible." Delaney's jaw worked. "Nothing's impossible until you see it with your own eyes. We keep moving. Road has to lead somewhere." We walked faster now, nearly running, our formation loose and panicked. The fog pressed close, and through it came sounds. Footsteps again, but everywhere now, surrounding us. The marching rhythm echoed from all directions, overlapping, creating a pattern that made my head hurt. Houses appeared on both sides more than before, their porches empty but feeling occupied. I swore I saw curtains move in windows, shapes shifting in the darkness beyond the glass. Lee kept looking over his shoulder, whispering prayers under his breath. Bishop's breathing came fast and shallow, on the edge of losing control. Then the road split, one path continuing straight, another branching right. Neither direction looked familiar. Both disappeared into the same gray wall of fog. Delaney stopped, studying both options, then made a choice. "Right? We go right." We followed because what else could we do? The path curved, wound between more buildings, structures we hadn't seen before. A schoolhouse, windows dark. A barber shop, pole still striped red and white. A hardware store with tools hanging in the window. All empty, all waiting. That's when I realized the truth that had been scratching at the back of my mind since we arrived. This town wasn't abandoned. It wasn't destroyed or broken down. It was preserved, kept exactly as it had been in 1973, taken care of by something that wanted it remembered. Cemetery Road. The name suddenly made horrible sense. This wasn't a town. It was a grave, and we'd walked right into it. The schoolhouse stood 3 stories tall. Red brick, weathered but solid, windows reflecting nothing but fog. Delaney called a stop outside it. His breathing controlled but his eyes showing the strain we all felt. Bishop leaned against a light post, hands on his knees, sucking air. Lee checked his watch for the 3rd time in as many minutes, then shook it like the movement might fix whatever was wrong. "Time's not moving," he said quietly. "Been stuck at 6:47 for the last hour." I checked mine. Same. 6:47. The second hand twitched, trying to move forward, then snapped back to the same position over and over like something was holding it in place. Delaney pulled out his compass, watched the needle spin lazy circles. "Magnetic interference has to be." But his voice carried no belief. We all knew what we were dealing with went beyond interference or equipment failure. The marching sounds had faded, but they'd been replaced by something worse. Singing. Children's voices, high and clear, drifting through the fog from somewhere inside the schoolhouse. Not a full song, just pieces. The same verse repeating, words unclear, but the tune unmistakable. The kind of tune that gets stuck in your head and won't leave. "We should move past it," Bishop said, voice tight. "Whatever's in there, we don't need to know." But Delaney was staring at the front doors, both standing open like an invitation or a dare. "If this place is what I think it is, we need to understand it. Knowledge is the only advantage we have." "Sir, with respect." Lee started, but Delaney cut him off. "That's an order. We go in. Quick look. 5 minutes. Stay together." So we climbed those steps, our boots echoing hollow against the stone. The singing grew louder as we got closer, sweet and terrible. Inside, the entrance hall stretched long and dim, lockers lining both walls. A trophy case stood to our right, filled with awards and photos from years past. The smell hit me right away. Chalk dust and floor wax. The exact smell of every school I'd ever been to. The singing came from upstairs. We moved toward the stairwell, each step creaking under our weight, despite the solid building. Bishop kept his rifle up, checking corners. Lee's hand shook where it gripped his gun. I tried to keep my breathing steady, tried to remember my training, but nothing had trained us for this. 2nd floor. Classrooms lined both sides of the hallway, doors closed except for one at the far end. Light spilled from it, warm and yellow, and the singing poured out with it. We got closer in formation, weapons ready, every muscle tight. Delaney reached the doorway first, looked inside, then froze, his face drained of color. Jesus Christ. I looked over his shoulder and felt my stomach drop. The classroom was full. Children sat at desks, back straight, hands folded, all facing the blackboard. They wore clothing from the 70s, neat and pressed. Their hair was trimmed and combed. They sang in perfect unison, voices blending. But like the soldiers, they had no faces, just smooth skin where features should be. And they sat perfectly still, not breathing, not moving, just singing. At the front of the room stood a woman, also faceless, wearing a long dress and sweater. Her hands moved in rhythm, leading the choir of blank-faced children. On the blackboard behind her, written in neat handwriting, September 14th, 1973. Lee made a choked sound. Bishop backed away from the door, shaking his head. No, this isn't real. This isn't happening." The singing stopped all at once, mid-note, cutting off so suddenly. The silence felt like a physical blow. The children stayed still. The teacher's hands froze mid-gesture. Then slowly, every head in that room turned toward the door, toward us. "Move," Delaney hissed. "Now." We ran down the hallway, down the stairs, boots pounding against floors that shouldn't echo that loud. Behind us came the sound of chairs scraping, small feet moving together. And then the singing started again, louder now, chasing us, filling the building with that sweet, terrible tune. We burst through the front doors into the fog and didn't stop. Past the schoolhouse, past the hardware store, running blind through streets that shifted and changed around us. A gas station appeared where none had been before. The church came close, then far away, then close again. Buildings repeated, rearranged, the town reshaping itself like a living thing. Bishop went down hard, tripping over nothing visible, hitting the pavement with a grunt. We pulled him up, half dragging him as we ran. His face was bleeding, nose broken, but he didn't complain, just kept moving, eyes wild with panic. We found ourselves back at the general store, or a version of it. Everything looked the same but felt different, like we were seeing a copy of a copy. Delaney kicked in the door, and we stumbled inside, blocking it behind us with whatever we could move. Shelves, display racks, anything heavy. For several minutes, we just breathed. Hard, rough gasps that filled the dusty air. Lee took care of Bishop's nose while Delaney and I kept watch at the windows. The fog pressed against the glass, thick as cotton, hiding everything beyond a few feet. "We're trapped," Bishop said through bloody hands. "This place won't let us leave." Delaney didn't argue. I saw it in his eyes, the acceptance that our situation had moved beyond any scenario we trained for. We were in enemy territory, but the enemy wasn't human, and the territory didn't follow physical rules. Lee pulled out his med kit, started counting supplies with shaking hands. "We have enough for maybe 2 days if we use it carefully. Water's the real problem. We each have one canteen." "Food's not an issue," I said, pointing at the shelves around us. "Place is stocked." "You want to eat food from this town?" Bishop asked, voice cracking. "After what we've seen?" He had a point. Everything here was wrong, preserved wrong, existing wrong. Who knew what eating anything from this place would do? Delaney moved away from the window, started looking at the store more carefully. He opened the cash register, found bills dated 1973, checked the newspapers stacked by the door, all from September of that year, picked up a can of soup, read the label. "Everything stopped on September 14th, 1973, he said. "Something happened here that day. Something that froze this entire town in time. Or trapped it," Lee added quietly. "Like flies in tree sap." I thought about the faceless soldiers, the faceless children, the faceless teacher. All moving, all active, but not alive, not in any way that mattered. Echoes of people, maybe. Impressions left behind by whatever disaster had eaten Ashford. The singing started again outside. Not children this time, but adults. Deep voices, hymn-like, coming from the direction of the church. Through the window, I saw lights flickering in that direction. Candles, maybe dozens of them, glowing through the fog. "They're gathering," Bishop whispered. "Whatever they are, they're all gathering at the church." Delaney checked his watch, still frozen at 6:47. "We wait for full dark, then we try for the church." "Sir?" Lee's voice rose in disbelief. "We're going toward them?" "The church is the center," Delaney said. "Whatever happened here started or ended at that church. If there's a way out, that's where we'll find it." I wanted to argue, wanted to suggest literally any other plan, but deep down, I knew he was right. The church had been pulling at us since we arrived, drawing our eyes, appearing and disappearing in the fog. It was the anchor point, the heart of whatever Cemetery Road had become. We settled in to wait, keeping watch in shifts. The singing continued outside, rising and falling like waves. Through it, I heard other sounds. Footsteps marching past, doors opening and closing, voices that almost sounded real, but never quite made words. The town was active now, fully awake, and we were insects caught in its web. Bishop got his radio working for about 30 seconds, static mostly, but through it came a voice, faint, distant, but clear enough to make out words. "Echo team, respond. What's your position?" Bishop grabbed the mic. "This is Bishop. We're in a town called Ashford. Location unknown. Requesting immediate pickup." More static, then, "No record of Ashford in your area. Repeat your actual position." "We're on Cemetery Road, the town that shouldn't exist. You need to..." The radio died. No fade, no gradual loss of signal. Just instant silence. Bishop tried everything. changing batteries, checking connections, going through channels. Nothing. We were cut off again. Lee pulled out a protein bar, stared at it for a long moment, then carefully rewrapped it and put it away. "I'm not hungry," he said, though his hands shook with hunger or fear. Maybe both. I moved to the back of the store, found a storage room filled with more supplies and something else. A calendar on the wall, every day from September 1st through September 13th, crossed off with red marker. September 14th was circled, the ink so heavy it had bled through the paper. Below it, someone had written in shaky handwriting, "They're coming for us." I showed Delaney. He studied it in silence, jaw working. Whatever happened here, they knew it was coming. They tried to warn themselves. But they couldn't stop it, Bishop said from behind us. Because time doesn't work right here. Maybe it never did. As darkness fell, or what passed for darkness in the constant fog, the singing reached a high point. Every voice in the town, hundreds of them, joining in perfect harmony. The sound was beautiful and horrifying, like standing inside a church while it fell down. Delaney checked his gear, motioned for us to do the same. "We move in 5 minutes. Stay close. Stay quiet. And if things go wrong, you run. Don't look back. Don't try to help anyone else. Just run." "Understood." We nodded, though we all knew running hadn't helped before. The town had us. It had been playing with us, letting us tire ourselves out, letting fear wear down our defenses. Now it was gathering us in, drawing us to the center of its web. I loaded a fresh magazine into my rifle, though I doubted bullets would help. Lee whispered prayers under his breath. Bishop stared at nothing, face pale, nose swollen from his fall. We were 4 soldiers, trained and equipped, and we'd never been more helpless. Delaney moved to the door, started removing our barricade. "Remember, the church is the target. Whatever we see, whatever happens, we get to that church." He pulled the door open. The fog had thinned just slightly, enough to show the street beyond. Lining it on both sides were the townspeople. Hundreds of them, faceless figures in old clothing, standing perfectly still, watching us with eyes they didn't have. Between them lay a clear path straight to the church, an invitation or a trap. We stepped out into it. The moment our boots hit pavement, the singing stopped. Total silence fell, heavy and complete. The faceless crowd stayed motionless as we walked between them, close enough to touch. I could smell them or smell what they'd been. Soap and sweat, perfume and tobacco, the sense of people who no longer existed. Halfway to the church, a figure stepped forward from the crowd, taller than the rest, wearing what looked like a military officer's uniform from the Vietnam time. He stood directly in our path, arms at his sides, head tilted. Delaney stopped, raised his rifle. "Move aside." The figure didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there blocking our way. I said move. Behind the officer, more figures came out. The faceless soldiers from earlier, forming up in ranks. They didn't raise weapons, didn't move forward, just stood in formation, a wall of bodies between us and the church. Lee's voice cracked. "They're not letting us through." "Then we go through them," Delaney said and pushed forward. The moment he touched the officer, everything changed. The figure grabbed Delaney's wrist, grip iron strong, and the captain's scream split the silence. He fought, tried to pull away, but more hands reached out. The soldiers came forward, and where they touched Delaney, his skin turned pale. Not hurt, not burned, just drained of color, of life. We opened fire. Rounds tore through the faceless soldiers, punching holes that closed right away. They didn't fall, didn't slow, just kept reaching, kept grabbing, and Delaney's screams became weaker. Bishop charged in, trying to pull the captain free. Hands grabbed him too. Lee and I fired until our magazines ran empty, then drew handguns, then knives, fighting in a desperate battle against enemies that couldn't be hurt. I saw Delaney's face as they dragged him down. Saw his features beginning to smooth, to fade. Saw his mouth open in a final scream that had no sound. Then the crowd closed over him and he was gone. "Fall back!" Lee shouted, firing his last rounds. Bishop stumbled backward, face going as blank as the things we fought. They'd touched him too much. held him too long. He looked at me, tried to speak, but no words came. His features started to blur. "I'm sorry," I told him and ran. Lee ran beside me, both of us sprinting away from the church, away from the crowd, into the fog and the twisting streets. Behind us came the singing again, triumphant now, celebrating their victory. We'd lost our captain. We'd lost our tech expert. It was just me and Doc Lee now, alone in a town that fed on soldiers, that collected them, that kept them singing in its endless September night. And ahead of us, through the fog, I swore I could see Cemetery Road stretching on forever. We ran until our lungs burned, until our legs threatened to give out, until the singing faded to a distant echo. Lee collapsed against a fence, gasping, tears streaming down his face. Not from running, from grief. We just watched our brothers vanish. Watched them become part of whatever nightmare Ashford has become. I leaned against a tree, rifle hanging loose in my hands. My mind kept replaying Delaney's face as it smoothed over, as his identity was erased. Bishop's empty expression as recognition left his eyes. They weren't dead. That would have been mercy. They were being absorbed, turned into more faceless residents of a town trapped in a single day. "We're next," Lee whispered. "They'll take us too." I wanted to argue, wanted to give him hope, but I couldn't find the words. We'd lost our leader, our tech expert, and were left with no communications, no reliable navigation, and no understanding of what we faced. By every measure, we were already dead, just waiting for Ashford to finish collecting us. The fog had thickened again, pressing close like a living thing. Through it came sounds, footsteps again, but scattered now. Not the organized march of soldiers or the unified movement of a crowd. Individual figures searching, hunting through the streets. Lee checked his pistol, counted rounds. 7 bullets left. Half a mag in the rifle. Handguns full. I didn't mention that bullets seemed useless here. Let him have that small comfort. "Where do we go?" he asked. "Every direction we try loops back. Every path leads to the church." I thought about that. He was right. From the moment we'd found Cemetery Road, everything had been pushing us toward that church. The faceless soldiers, the children, the townspeople. All of it designed to drive us to the center. "Then maybe that's where we need to be," I said slowly. Lee stared at me. "Are you crazy? You saw what happened to Delaney, to Bishop. That place is a death trap. Everything here is a death trap. But the church is the heart. Delaney was right about that. If there's a way to understand this, to maybe find a weakness, it's there. Or we just get absorbed faster," Lee said. "Maybe, but at least we'd go trying." I met his eyes. "I'm not dying faceless in this town. Not ending up like them, singing the same song forever. I'd rather burn fighting than fade singing." He was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with fear and duty. Finally, he nodded. "Together, then. We go together." We moved carefully now, saving energy, watching every shadow. The town felt different, more active. Doors stood open that had been closed before. Lights flickered in windows. The singing continued in the distance, but closer now were whispers, voices speaking in urgent tones, words just out of reach of understanding. As we moved through the shifting streets, I started noticing patterns. Certain buildings appeared multiple times, but with slight changes. The general store would have different products in its window. The diner's neon would be a different color, like we were moving through different versions of the same town. Layers stacked on top of each other. "Time's not frozen," I said suddenly. "It's layered. All the September 14 THS happening at once. Overlapping." Lee looked at me, then around at the buildings. "That's why everything keeps changing. We're slipping between different versions of the same day." It made a sick kind of sense. Whatever had happened in 1973 hadn't just stopped time. It had trapped every moment of that day, creating an infinite loop that collected anyone who wandered in. The faceless residents weren't ghosts. They were people caught in the loop, worn down until their individuality erased. We found ourselves on a street with houses. Houses with neat yards and empty driveways. One caught my attention. A two-story colonial with a porch swing still swaying gently despite no wind. The front door stood open, and from inside came a sound different from the others. Sobbing. Human sobbing. Lee and I exchanged glances. Against all our training, all our survival instincts, we moved toward it because that sound meant someone else was here. Someone else fighting the same nightmare. Inside, the house was furnished, lived in. Family photos lined the walls showing people from the 70s. Happy faces at picnics, birthday parties, holidays, all with features, all with identities. We followed the sobbing to a bedroom upstairs. A woman sat on the bed, face in her hands, crying. She wore a dress from the time, hair styled in the fashion of '73. But unlike everyone else we'd met, she had a face, worn and tear-stained but present. She looked up as we entered, eyes widening. "You're real," she gasped. "You're actually real." I kept my rifle ready, but lowered. "Who are you?" "Margaret. Margaret Hayes." She stood, unsteady. "What year is it? Please, I need to know what year it is." 2024, Lee said gently. Her face crumpled. 51 years? Oh God, it's been 51 years. "You've been trapped here since 1973? I asked. She nodded, sinking back onto the bed. "We all were. The whole town. It started with the military exercises in the mountains. They were testing something, some kind of weapon or device. We heard rumors, saw lights in the sky at night. Then, on September 14th, everything changed." Lee moved closer. "What happened?" "There was a sound, like the air itself was tearing. Then the fog came, thick and wrong. People started changing, losing themselves. By nightfall, half the town had no faces. They gathered at the church, singing. The rest of us tried to run, but the roads kept looping back. We couldn't leave." "How are you still you?" I asked. "How do you still have your face?" Margaret's laugh was bitter. "I don't know. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe I'm going crazy so slowly I don't notice. Every day I wake up and it's September 14th again. Every day I watch my neighbors walk to church and sing. Every day I lose a little more of myself." She looked at us with desperate eyes. "But you're different. You came from outside. You're not part of the loop. Maybe you can break it." "How?" Lee asked. "The church. It all flows from the church. Whatever they turned on, whatever tore the fabric of this place, it's anchored there. The device, the weapon, I don't know what to call it, but it's still running, still active. That's what's keeping the loop going." My mind raced. If we destroy it, would that free everyone? Margaret's face fell. "I don't think there's anyone left to free. Everyone else finished changing years ago. I'm the last one holding on, and I can feel myself slipping. Sometimes I wake up and can't remember my husband's name. Sometimes I look in mirrors and my face is blurry." She stood, moved to a dresser, pulled out a photograph. It showed her with a man and 2 children, all smiling. "This was my family. Thomas, Sarah, and Michael. They're in the church now, singing. They don't remember me. They don't remember themselves." Lee's voice was thick. "I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just finish it." Margaret's eyes hardened with purpose. "End the loop. Let us finally rest. The device is in the church basement. I've seen it. Mechanical and impossible. Humming with power. Destroy it. And maybe September 14th can finally end." She gave us directions through the town. A route, she said, would take us directly to the church without being stopped. As we prepared to leave, she touched my arm. "When it's over, when the loop breaks, we'll all fade. Everyone trapped here will finally move on. It won't be pretty, but it'll be peace. Promise me you'll see it through." "I promise," I said. Margaret smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen in Ashford. "Thank you. Tell the world we were here. Tell them we were real." We left her in that house, watching from the window as we disappeared into the fog. I wondered if she'd still be there when this ended, or if keeping her identity for 51 years had already cost her everything. Following Margaret's directions, we moved through alleys and backyards, avoiding main streets where the faceless crowd still gathered. The singing had reached a fever pitch. Hundreds of voices joined in constant hymn. They knew we were close, knew we were making our final push. The church rose before us, taller than it should be, steeple piercing the fog like a needle. Every window blazed with candles, and through them I could see shadows moving. The faceless congregation, waiting, singing, celebrating a day that would never end. Lee and I crouched behind a low wall, studying the building. The main entrance faced the street, surely guarded. But Margaret had mentioned a side door, one used by the pastor that led directly to the basement. How do we know we can trust her? Lee whispered. We don't. But it's the only option we have. We circled around, staying low, rifles ready. The side door was exactly where Margaret said, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. It stood slightly open, as if expecting us. Lee tested it carefully, pushing it wider. Stairs went down into darkness, steep and narrow. From below came a sound, a low mechanical hum that vibrated through the floor. The device, whatever nightmare machine the military had turned on 51 years ago. It was down there, still running, still feeding the loop. We went down step by careful step. The humming grew louder, felt in our bones now. Emergency lights flickered along the walls, throwing everything in sickly green. The basement opened into a large space, and what we saw stopped us cold. The device sat in the center of the room, 10 feet tall, made of metal and glass, and parts that looked both technological and organic. Wires spread from it like veins, running into the walls, the floor, the ceiling. At its heart pulsed a light, rhythmic and steady like a heartbeat. And surrounding it were bodies, not dead, not quite. The original researchers, I realized, military people and scientists in faded uniforms and lab coats, their faces long since erased. They stood in a circle around the device, hands touching its surface, feeding it somehow, keeping it going with their own existence. Jesus! Lee breathed. The hum changed pitch and the bodies turned toward us, moving together. They stepped away from the device, forming a wall between us and it. Their mouths opened, and from them poured that terrible singing. I raised my rifle. We're ending this now. We opened fire. Rounds sparked off the device, denting metal, cracking glass. The bodies surged forward, but we kept shooting, pouring everything we had into the machine. Lee threw a thermite grenade, the only explosive we had left. It stuck to the device's side, burning white hot. The bodies grabbed us, their touch icy and draining. I felt it right away, the pull, the erasing beginning. My fingers went numb, my face tingled, but I kept firing one-handed, point blank, into the device's heart. The thermite burned through. Glass shattered. Something inside the machine screamed. A sound that wasn't mechanical or human, but something in between. The pulsing light flickered, stuttered, began to fade. Lee was down, 3 bodies holding him, his face already starting to blur. I tore free of the hands grabbing me, slammed a fresh magazine home, and emptied it into the dying device. The light went out. For a moment, nothing happened. The bodies froze mid-reach. The singing cut off. Total silence fell, more complete than any we'd experienced. Then the church began to shake. Cracks spread across the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The bodies around us collapsed, falling like puppets with cut strings. And from above came sounds I'll never forget. Hundreds of voices, no longer singing, but crying out. Relief, agony, terror, joy, all mixed together as the loop finally broke. I grabbed Lee, who was conscious but blank-faced and confused, and dragged him toward the stairs. The building was coming apart, stone and wood crumbling as 51 years of paused decay caught up in seconds. We stumbled up the stairs, through the side door, into the fog. The church was collapsing, folding in on itself, and beyond it, the entire town was fading. Buildings becoming see-through, streets dissolving. The faceless crowd stood motionless as their forms flickered, grew transparent, and then simply weren't there anymore. I saw Margaret standing on her porch one last time. She waved, smiled, and then she too faded like morning mist. All of them, every trapped soul in Ashford, finally released. The fog began to thin. Real fog, natural fog. Not the supernatural barrier that had held the town. Through it I saw trees. Real trees in a real forest. And in the distance, the ridge we came down what felt like years ago. Lee stirred beside me, blinking. His face was fully present again. Features returned. What happened? We won, I said simply. We made our way back through the disappearing fog, walking over ground where Ashford had stood. But there was nothing left. No buildings, no roads, not even foundations. Just forest floor, undisturbed, as if no town had ever existed. We found the ridge by dawn. Real dawn with real sunlight breaking through real clouds. Lee got the radio working, made contact with base. They'd been searching for us for 3 days, they said. 3 days. We'd experienced weeks in Ashford. The pickup team found us hours later, freezing and exhausted, but alive. They questioned us, of course, asked questions we couldn't fully answer. When we mentioned Ashford, mentioned Cemetery Road, they checked every map, every record. Nothing. No town, no road, no history of any settlement in that valley. They found the site where the old military testing place had been. Shut down in 1973 after an accident they wouldn't detail, but no town, no Ashford. Just forest growing over forgotten mistakes. Lee and I both got medical discharges. PTSD, they said, traumatic episode. They were kind about it, but firm. We were done soldiering. Neither of us argued. Some things break you in ways you can't come back from. I think about Delaney sometimes, about Bishop, about whether they found peace when the loop broke or if they were too far gone, too absorbed into Ashford's nightmare. I think about Margaret holding on to her identity for 51 years out of pure stubborn will, just waiting for someone to finally set her free. And I think about that September 14th, replaying forever in the fog, collecting soldiers and civilians and anyone unlucky enough to find Cemetery Road, feeding on them, wearing them down, erasing them piece by piece until they joined the faceless choir. We destroyed the device. We broke the loop. But sometimes late at night when the fog rolls thick through West Virginia, I swear I can still hear it. That singing, faint and far away, like echoes of Ashford still lingering, trapped in places between time, waiting for the next person to stumble onto a road that shouldn't exist. If you're ever deep in the Appalachian wilderness and you see old pavement where no road should be, if you find a sign pointing to a town your map doesn't show, turn around. Walk away, because some places aren't meant to be found, and some roads only lead one direction. Into the fog, into the loop, into a September day that never ends. Lee and I don't talk about it much, but we both check our watches all the time now. Making sure time is moving forward. Making sure we're not stuck. Making sure our faces are still our own when we look in mirrors because we got out. We survived. But part of us is still there. Still walking those shifting streets. Still hearing that song. That's the thing about places like Ashford. Even when you escape, they never quite let you go. The town is gone. The device is destroyed. The loop is broken. But if you hear singing in the fog, if you see lights where no town should be, remember what I'm telling you. Don't investigate. Don't get closer. Don't think you'll be the exception because Ashford waited 51 years to be found. And there might be other places, other roads, other towns trapped in their own nightmare loops. The military tested things in these mountains they won't talk about. Things that bent reality in ways we still don't understand. Cemetery Road is gone. But there are other roads, other forgotten places where time doesn't work right and the fog never lifts. Stay out of them. For your own sake. Stay out. And if you're watching this late at night, if you're alone and the fog is pressing against your windows, check your watch. Make sure time is moving. Make sure September 14th, 1973 isn't coming for you, too. We broke the loop, but the pattern remains, and patterns have a way of repeating. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. The next story is coming and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Drop your country and the time you're watching in the comments below. Let me know who else is out there late at night listening to these stories. Let me know I'm not alone.